Hello again. Welcome to One Man's Journey. And this is my weekly check-in and just kind of walking around this property near my house or my flat. And it's kind of a beautiful sunny day today. And I'm always in this need whenever the sun comes out. I've got to get outside and I've got to sit down in the sun and just like soak in the sun's energy. I'm like a lizard that way. I love that feeling of just kind of the warm sun, cool air, and just kind of basking in it. You can see it there in the background. And it's just a perfect combination for me just to soak that in and just feel fulfilled with the sun's energy. And I wanted to, with that, I wanted to kind of touch upon something that I've been with this past week, and this is around the notion of desire versus the need or the attachment to fulfill that desire, which kind of becomes a kind of a should energy or an expectation or a pressure to do that. And I've noticed that it becomes sort of has been a thing of mine, I recognize, over a lot of my life, around having this sort of pressure cooker of desire and need and want just flowing around my energy field. And I know that it can come from my mind as well as it comes from my body, and just kind of this constant sort of wah 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 energy around trying to assuage or satiate ideas that come into my mind, questions, curiosities, desires, needs, wants, and they kind of become a giant sort of tyrannical consortium of thoughts and energies in my field. And I recognize how much I have felt a pressure to, again, satiate or fulfill, to get to an answer, to understand, desire something to be fulfilled. And then there's a question to be figured out, a riddle to be solved, a problem to be solved. And it's just this ongoing thing that happens with me. And I notice I've been taking some breaks around, just taking in social media, news, even music, just being in my own quietude and noticing how much goes on inside of my head and my body when I'm just in this kind of quiet space. And then I feel a restlessness. And then that's when I get outside and go for a walk or I do some exercise, all of which are wonderful things or what I need for myself. Otherwise, I tend to go a bit crazy. And but just sitting in stillness, even in meditation, I can just feel this ongoing. What I likened it to is that sort of humming sound, wah 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 wah, that kind of comes in my body, and that sound that the computer used to make when we had dial-up internet, that really god-awful sound, that screeching sound when it was connecting to a server or something. And that's what it sounds like and feels like in my body when I'm meditating a lot. And I recognize just during my days how much I'm reacting or responding to things that come in and out of my field that aren't necessarily in need of being understood or taken care of or responded to in that moment. But yet there's this deep pressure to make that happen. And so I'm just trying to learn how to be with that pressure and not just notice it, not do anything about it, not so much respond to it, but just notice it. And I've come to this intuition to just start writing down all of these things, questions I want answered, desires I want fulfilled, needs that I feel are in my field, and just write them down as opposed to then just having them bubble around like a pinball machine in my head, and I'm trying to like put them in the right hole or something like that. And I think that that might help a little bit in terms of my relationship to what seems to be kind of a standard operating procedure inside of my kind of like computer and my field. And so yeah, and it just kind of, I wanted to just bring that up because I know that can be quite a challenging thing for some of us to contend with, this ongoing onslaught of expectation to meet something, to be this or to be that. You know, one example, of course, this is one man's journey. So one example, of course, is trying to meet that expectation to be a man. And what does that mean? And how do I do that? And, or I have to come up with this problem to solve, and I need to solve that because that's what I do. I'm a man, I solve problems. So that's just one example. And of course, there's usually body needs, physical needs, sexual needs, desires, money needs, desires. And they're just one right after the other. The need to help society along somehow. Can I contribute in such a way that might help the betterment of our world and evolution? You know, just like on and on and on. I started this channel, you know, a year ago out of a desire to, you know, possibly meet a need for myself, maybe a need for other people. And when I started it, I had these grand ideas of like, oh, it could be this, and I can do that, and I can start a Substack, and I can then maybe do a men's group, and all of a sudden, all these grandiose ideas, which are not bad. It's not, the ideas and desires are not the bad thing. It's the kind of the intensity at which I relate to them. And so it just became something I let go of because I just felt like I had something else cooking in the oven. And then it turned into something else, and then I gave all my attention and focus to that. And so it's just this sort of like bouncing from one thing to another and being in constant process around it. And I honor all of those, every single one of them, jumping into it and just being fully engaged in all of that was all part of a sacred process. And so now it's really wanting to really settle in and just not have the desires or the needs or the fantasies, but really learn to how I want to relate to those things, and then how much pressure arises in my field. And there can be good pressure, a need to act and to fulfill that particular desire when the timing feels right, when the energy's there, and not doing it because of the other pressure, which can be a bit negative, and that's doing it out of expectation or out of desperation, because I'm afraid that I'm going to miss out, or or I won't succeed, or maybe I will succeed. Maybe that's another fear. So there's just lots of things that bubble around these ideas of desire and needs and dreams and hopes that I think we can get so sort of wrapped up in. And I'm just wanting to take the time to really feel my relationship to it and note what those are and feel the vibration in my body around those things. And if it's something that just feels like it lights me up, it's like, yeah, that feels like it. This is good. This feels good to me. Then I'll go do it. And that's not a pressure. It's just a desire. It moves. I move with it. But then if something feels intense inside of me where it must get done, and if I don't because this negative thing will happen, well, that's out of a different place. That's not actually out of love or passion. That's just out of fear or desperation. And so that's what I'm trying to note, the difference between those two things. And, you know, if I'm doing a video, do I feel like doing a video today? I certainly have desires to keep doing videos, but I don't want to feel like I'm doing that on expectation because, you know, I don't know, people won't watch or something like that. I don't know. Whatever that other desperate need is, this need to be seen or heard, whatever that is, or I should, because that's what people who do YouTube channels do. They do things consistently. So it's like an ongoing relationship to desires and needs and wants and expectations and what those mean to us. And we got so wrapped up, I think, from our conditioning, you know, growing up in families and in society where we lived in our culture. There's just a lot to that. And I just like taking the break and just feeling myself being in a sort of a more slower pace around these things and just noting them and then choosing to do what I want with them as I choose to. And kind of, again, flowing with that and seeing where it takes me, letting what's authentic in me and what I'm really designed and built for and what lights me up is really what I'm curious about. And that's the other thing about being curious, just being curious rather than constricting. I can allow the curiosity to lead me to fulfill something, or not even to fulfill it, just to follow it. That's probably a better word, to follow the desire, not to fulfill it. That's what I meant to talk about. There it is. The following of the desire as opposed to fulfilling the desire. And I think that's the thing. It's like you follow the desire and it takes you someplace. And it may not take you to the actual desire that you had specifically, but it pulls out something inside of you that it's meant to do that. So again, it's not so much about the fulfillment, but just the following of the energy that the desire is sort of illuminating or vibrating inside of you for a particular reason. So that was the main thing that I remember getting to when I was writing about this. So yeah, so I'm going to continue to digest that and see where it leads me and see what comes up, and I'll report back if anything substantial or noteworthy occurs in that exploration. And I hope you're all having a lovely week, whenever you find this, and whatever the weather is, sending you some of this wonderful sunshine Portugal weather to you. And I wish you the best, and we'll see what happens next week for the winter solstice, if I do a video then. And if not, have a lovely holiday season for those of you that are celebrating. And if not, have a fantastic week, and I'll see you later.